So getting back to our tubes and dams model for part three, um, if you were to think of like a pipe and you just stick a rock big enough in there that it could get lodged, it's going to block up about 90% of the pipe, um, but things could still get through. So your colon is similar to that, in that if you get a large rock of stool um, lodged in your colon, the hard kind of ball of uncomfortable, what you would think of constipated stool, is stuck there. And that's hard to pass. But if it's not 100% blockage and there's a little bit of space around the sides, the loose, watery stool can still work its way around. And so somebody who's got um, colon cancer um, can kind of sometimes experience the same thing. You've got a tumor that's sitting in there, it's blocking a significant portion of that tube that's your colon. It's hard for the normally formed firmer stool to get by, but the loose watery stuff can kind of slip around the edges. So you can actually experience both symptoms. You can experience diarrhea because the hard stuff can't get by easily. So at times, only the loose stool gets through and you have diarrhea. And then eventually that big ball winds up working its way out, and then you strain and strain and strain, and you get that hard rock of stool out too. So all of these symptoms can eventually be related, and sometimes the person will experience one, and sometimes they'll actually experience both. So moving on, other symptoms: blood in the stool. If you've got a hard rock of stool and that ball of stool scrapes the tumor, that tumor will lose its lining of skin and it will bleed onto the stool. Sometimes you'll get a pencil-sized stool. So if the tumor forms in a ring around the lumen, instead of just being one ball coming out into the colon, that will make it a narrow opening, and the person will experience very thin stools when they use the restroom. They can get loss of appetite, and sometimes that's just from the tumor itself and just feeling bad from having cancer. But other times that's from you're just so horribly constipated and your intestines being full, that sends a signal to your body and your brain saying, hey, we don't have any more room in here. Don't give us anything. And then you'll also get a feeling of fatigue, and sometimes that's from the chronic low-level blood loss from bleeding into your colon and onto your stool, that you're anemic and you have low iron. So screening, and what we mean by screening means you're testing somebody before they know they have a problem. So if you're going to screen somebody for lung cancer, that means you're screening them before they have a cough and they're coughing up blood and they're having a hard time breathing. And you're screening somebody before they've smoked for 30 or 40 years. So in the case of colon cancer, you'd be screening somebody before they're constipated and having diarrhea and they're having bloody stool. You're screening somebody and you're testing somebody who is otherwise, quote unquote, normal. You're trying to pick up somebody without symptoms so they can live longer and improve survival. So you want to screen for diseases that are either very common, that we see a lot in the population and are treatable if you catch early, something like colon cancer, because if you treat it early, you're going to really improve survival, or that are not common, but if you miss it, it's really, really bad. And if you do treat it, you've got a chance of really doing something good. So if you guys think all the way back to immunology, when we talked about severe combined immune deficiency, it's deadly. But if you catch it early before the people are overwhelmed with infections and you can find a bone marrow donor, those people can be saved. So not very common, but if you intervene, something good happens. And there's very little point for screening for something that you can't really do anything about. So colon cancer is the top case, common and treatable. And we'll pick up with part 4.